speak to those of you who might be learning a new language as part of your Fulbright, which was not a requirement for Norway, but was a requirement for myself. If I was going to apply sincerely to this program, then I wanted to be able to, exactly as you said, be able to greet people and be able to navigate my way through a city. So I recommend Duolingo as an app. I also started watching videos in Norwegian and just learning through osmosis and learning through context that way. I also did a lot of research, of course, on how much English do they speak in Norway, and most people in Norway are bilingual. The further north you go, the more likely you are to run into Norwegian speakers. So that was something I considered when I was thinking about placement and location as well.
As far as I know, there wasn't any language requirement for India when I was applying to that program. I mean, India is a very deeply multilingual place, and English is very useful and helpful in most of those places, but depending on where you are in the country and who you expect to be able to engage with, other languages certainly come in handy. When I was preparing to go, since I had spent a semester abroad, I had the good fortune to take a semester of Hindi to be able to have a little bit of experience studying Hindi, and I also got the opportunity, I got a scholarship from my undergrad institution to spend the summer before I left for my Fulbright doing intensive second-year Hindi at the University of Washington. So that was immensely helpful. So I had about 2 years worth of Hindi under my belt when I went, which was enough that when I landed in a hostel where some of the students spoke English and some didn't, and none of the staff spoke English, I was prepared to be able to, say, okay, here I'm going to use this now. And it was immensely helpful in developing my language skills, which has continued to serve me well, not only throughout that year, but also in my career going forward. I mean, I still use Hindi and Urdu, which is a closely related language, in my research now.
Okay, so I'm going to be difficult and annoying and give a three-sided answer to that question. First, for background, I did not actually speak any German at all at the time that I applied to Germany, other than the few words that I had learned during the course of my 3-month internship. So I set a goal for myself that I was going to take an intensive German course before orientation started. And then the Goethe Institute has headquarters in Bremen, so I took classes once I arrived in Bremen. I continued to take night classes twice a week there. As to requirements, I kind of got the lucky end of the stick because I was a doctoral student, and the doctoral applicants to most of the European countries are not required to speak the language, although they are very strongly encouraged to learn it. Because, as you say, you need to go around talking to people. I had to talk to my landlord. I had to talk to the few people in the institute that did not speak either English, or the only other language I speak is Japanese, so that's useless, in Germany at least. Undergraduates, they will probably require you to have at least a year of German before you apply, because in the last couple of years, Germany is experiencing a very strange phenomenon. Partly in conjunction with the surge of migrants moving into Germany, and partly because as tuition in the US has gone up and up and up, there's been a phenomenon in the last few years whereby American students realize that college tuition in Germany is pocket change. It's literally 100 euro a semester. Because education is government sponsored and they believe it's equal opportunity. So Germany is also very aggressive about what they call handicap accessibility, and normally what they mean by handicap accessibility is, accommodating blind or wheelchair bound or deaf people. But there's been a huge surge in the ethical question of, is language communication, is the inability to communicate with your teachers a handicap, and does that need to be compensated for? So since they've had this sudden surge in American students and migrant students from Syria and Afghanistan applying for university positions in Germany, a lot of the universities, which up to now did not have German language as a requirement because they didn't believe it, because it was never necessary up till now, a lot of undergraduate programs now require a German proficiency exam, which is basically the equivalent of the TOEFL for the United States. But if you're applying as a higher than bachelor's student, Odds are you're not going to be taking classes, you're going to be doing hands-on research instead, because their system's very structured. You take courses as an undergraduate, you take part-time courses and then part-time research as a master's student, and by the time you get to be a PhD, you're doing pure research. I never took a single class while I was there. I took some workshops, but no classes. So I will say I'm not sure what the current version is, but when I applied in 2013, undergraduates had to have either a year of German at minimum or a note from their supervisor saying that their language deficiency will be compensated for. But I would say definitely check with your host country.
I'm going to answer this question twofold. So first, I think it's really important to keep in mind what Heather had said about, we had a lot of Fulbright grantees that would go to Barcelona or other parts of Spain and they refused to speak Spanish. Like the people wouldn't speak Spanish with them, so even though they had that under their belt, it wasn't that useful to them. Two, I was not required to speak Spanish, but I think it was just like a basic proficiency. I had like a middle proficiency, but it was way subpar compared to many of the other Fulbright grantees. And so what the cool thing about Fulbright is that at least for how it was in Spain, we had a stipend of 500 euros that was in addition to the stipend that we got each month, and that you could use that for things like language courses. So I would use that for Spanish, and it was very interesting because just like the United States, various parts of Spain speak Spanish differently. So Andalusia, for example, they drop their S off. So instead of say gracias, they say gracia. Or in Madrid, you're from Madrid if you have a lisp. So if you want to say like quiero cerveza, you would say quiero cerveza. And so it was very hard sometimes, and then when you would speak, I would force myself to go, I loved going to the grocery store. They have a version of Publix, it's amazing. But I would go in there, and then sometimes I would speak, and always, every time I would get, where are you from? And I'd be like, from the United States, and then that would always generate some kind of conversation, sometimes not so great.
So actually, my final question for the panel is focused a little bit on what you all have been sharing already in terms of any other advice you'd like to share with the audience as far as either applying for a Fulbright, what you have done with your Fulbright, anything that you want people to know that maybe is not found on the very, very dense, extensive website. And then we can move into question and answer from the audience.
I just have one piece of advice that I'd like to share, that students are often really sort of misinformed or misunderstand that Fulbright does not have a minimum GPA. Your application is your chance to tell your story. If you had something where you were struggling, you changed majors, or you went from a music major to an engineering major and you struggled in your first couple of classes, address that, don't ignore it. Address it, it shows character, it shows strength of your self-esteem, self-efficacy, and it's an opportunity to demonstrate that you can come past conflict or struggle, and you can turn that into an opportunity. So don't leave any stone unturned, believe in yourself, and start that application.
I'll speak to the importance of finding a connection with your country. So you heard about my process. I didn't know that I wanted to study or teach in Norway, but I grew into that with my research. I am a creative writing student, of course. I was fascinated by Norwegian literature. And Ms. Chambers will remember this. It's important to continue researching even as you're revising your documents, because something will come upon you. There was a short story that had been translated in the New Yorker for the first time from Norwegian into English, and she was one of the first female Norwegian writers to have her whole collection of short stories translated. And I thought that was a phenomenal connection of, I'm a short story writer myself. This exchange of literature would be really important for me to pay attention to over there. And then I was also integrating my personal experience. I'm from Michigan, not from Florida, so Norway makes sense for me in terms of climate. So I made sure to address that I felt comfortable in cold spaces. I'm an avid kayaker, and of course there's the gorgeous fjords of Norway. What better place can I go to? So making those connections to both intellectual and personal will be very important in your work.
I think what I would want to say to everyone is really to, start early and start thinking and planning. That's important, but also to imagine what you could do and what this could mean. It's an amazing kind of opportunity, and you may not actually know where it will end up leading you eventually, and that's okay. And that this is a time for you to really, think big, take a risk, try it out, and work with the folks here who can help you shape that vision and really do something extraordinary.
On the subject of preparing and things like that, I'll second what everybody else at this table has said. Start early, take full advantage of Lauren Cubed, and be very open to the fact that you're going to be revising and re-revising and things like that. It's your adventure, it's what you want to make of it, and on that subject, once you get to your country, I will say this, take advantage of it. It's going to be an absolutely phenomenal adventure. You're going to be funded, you're not going to have to work part-time. All you're expected to do is meet your academic requirements, and if you got into Fulbright, you can meet your academic requirements, and then just make an adventure out of it. Take advantage of whatever your country's got to offer. Germany, for example, has one of the most comprehensive rail systems in the world. I traveled everywhere on weekends. I lived extremely sparsely, and then on the weekends I just traveled everywhere. I didn't spend money on any souvenirs or anything. I just traveled places and looked at things, and that's what I love doing. But take advantage of it if you find out whatever arts or opera or ballet or music fest or anything else that's going on. Talk to your friends. Don't be afraid of them making fun of your horrible accent when you try to speak their language. They're going to make fun of you anyway. That's how you learn. Yeah, talk to people, listen to music, cook, do all the things. This is a phenomenal privilege and a phenomenal adventure, and you should absolutely milk it to its absolutely to the max. Have fun with it.
I'm going to give a little bit of unconventional advice. So you've heard everyone say, go to the Office of National Scholarships, but if you do, just like everything in life, you get what you put into it. So respect your time. If someone's telling you there's a deadline, you need to send it there, respect that, reach out to them, chase that. The thing is that realize that you have a plethora of resources that when you graduate, you still have, but not in the sense that you do now. You have a community, you have people that are in your corner. Take advantage of that. Use things like LinkedIn. I actually had a girl from Ohio sent me a message and she said, "Hi Arshad, I'm so-and-so, I'm applying for this exact same program that you did. Can you give me some insight?" And we connected and we've become friends, and I've kind of, told her a little bit things about the process, and that was a great experience. Also, be humble. What I found extremely amazing about Fulbrighters, I met Fulbrighters that were getting their PhD, MD at Johns Hopkins, doing research on AIDS, studying at U Chicago, doing big things in history and art and through all fields. But the one thing that they all had in common was that they were humble and they were hungry. And if you exhibit that in your daily life, when you put that in your application, it shows. You're never too important to be nice to people. And I think that's what the sense of the community that Fulbright really fosters. And another thing, like I said before, realize you're not just going on a travel grant. You're not just going, okay, I'm going to go to a country and I'm going to live somewhere and I'm going to have a stipend and I'm going to travel, or the accolades that Fulbright gives you. I am so proud to say I'm a USF alumna, I'm an IE alumna, and I'm a Fulbrighter. I can call myself a Fulbrighter. I got my master's. That's all great. That's fantastic.